This is episode 0 of One Story. This is your host, Dr. Matikiti. This podcast is about Africa's business stories, the ones we don't often hear in boardrooms, newspapers, or case studies. These are stories of resilience, creativity, failure, and renewal. The stories of ordinary people in Africa doing extraordinary things to move our continent forward. So this is just episode 0, which is basically an introductory episode. It's going to be shorter than what I envisage the other episodes to be. The idea is just to set the tone and just to do an introductory episode, just to explain the need for the episode, why it matters, and why I felt that it was important for me to start this series. I'll introduce myself briefly. My name is Dr. Matikiti. I am an entrepreneur, an academic, a scholar based in Johannesburg, South Africa. I'm originally from Harare, Zimbabwe. I've been in Johannesburg for the past 15 years, where I have worked in different sectors, and I've also been an entrepreneur, started many businesses, and also invested in a few different types of businesses in the IT consultant space and also in the logistics space. I'll talk about that more as the episode series unfolds. So the idea is to talk about business resilience in Africa, which is an important thing. I'm very passionate about SMEs. I think they're very important, not just as a case study, but also just to many economies in Africa and beyond. So the idea here is just to go through different issues which I feel are of importance based on my own entrepreneurial journey and also based on my academic journey. My PhD was focused on SME resilience in South Africa, looking at how these businesses overcome institutional voids and exogenous shocks by using dynamic capabilities to become resilient. Again, it's something that I'll delve into as I go deeper into the series. So why does it matter? Africa's business stories are often underrepresented or even too simplified. And I felt that it was important for us to take a moment through this One Story podcast series to highlight the importance of those SMEs, not only in South Africa, but in the rest of the continent. So SMEs, as you know, are small and medium-sized enterprises, and they're very crucial to Africa's economy. As they foster job creation, they contribute also significantly to GDP, and they also foster economic growth for not just many African countries, but for many global economies as well. So it's obviously very important to highlight why these are important. Entrepreneurship expressed through these SMEs is quite an important job creation avenue in many African countries where there's stagnancy in job creation and maybe governments are seen as not doing enough to create jobs or create the environment that fosters for job creation. So then the alternative is entrepreneurship and going into business and starting your own business, which I have done, and a lot of other countless millions or even billions of people have done across the world. So what do you expect from this season? Expect authentic, practical insights from entrepreneurs, from leaders, and from innovators across different sectors. The episode highlights, I'll just talk about it briefly as I conclude. The very first episode will be a solo episode, which I feature myself. And this is where I'll talk about purpose-driven entrepreneurship, how to start with purpose. And I talk about my own journey, how I got into business in South Africa. And I also talk about the fact that when I came to South Africa, I was mainly interested in just working a job. But after a while, I decided to venture into entrepreneurship. I had done some entrepreneurial activities in Zimbabwe before I came to South Africa. Most of them failed dismally. So when I then came to South Africa, I was very much aware of that and I didn't want to repeat that cycle. So I thought there was safety in employment. But over the years, I gravitated maybe naturally or even maybe due to circumstances towards that entrepreneurial avenue. So I talk about that in the first episode where I just introduced how I went into entrepreneurship, how I started the companies, and how we got to where we got. And this was from 2015. And look forward to that journey in the very first episode. Episode number 2 is Navigating the African Business Frontier, where I'll feature my good friend and former colleague, Dr. Rutendo Windingwi. He is a man who has done business in Africa and beyond, and he's an academic, he has a PhD. He works extensively with all sorts of firms to try and motivate them. He's also an author, he's written books and traveled extensively across the continent. It'll be exciting to hear his insights about how to do business in Africa and what to expect as you go into Africa. The third episode is titled How to Build Entrepreneurial Momentum. So this is where I talk about entrepreneurial spirit or startup energy, where it comes from, how you can nurture it, and how you can actually use it and motivate your team to build that momentum, which is very important in the formative years of every new venture. Episode number 4 is talking about choosing the right partner. And this is where I feature my good friend and business partner, Mr. Terence Malunga, that we discuss how we came to be business partners and the sort of values that brought us together. So then the highlight there is obviously you need to trust the person that you partner with. You need to have alignment in terms of values, in terms of principles and things that you believe in. And also it's very important to speak about conflict resolution. How do you manage conflict? As individuals who come from very different backgrounds, there is conflict, which is inevitable. How do you manage that? So that's what I'll talk about in episode number 4. Episode number 5 is the cost of entrepreneurship. And this is where I talk about whether or not it is worth it for everyone to start their own business and go into entrepreneurship. There are hidden trade-offs and sacrifices to the entrepreneurial journey. And I think that most times when we speak about it, we probably tend to overemphasize the benefits that you might reap from the entrepreneurial journey and really don't spend enough time talking about the adversities that you could face and the issues that you might face in that journey, and if they're actually worth your trouble. So that's what you guys can look forward to in episode number 5. Episode number 6 talks about the African entrepreneurship from a woman's perspective, and this is where I would feature a woman entrepreneur, and we talk about gender-specific challenges, women empowerment frameworks in Africa, and if they're effective, if they work, and obviously we'll highlight the issues that women face in that episode. Episode number 7 is what I titled Managing Self and Leading People. So this is basically where I talk about leadership and how you can manage a growing team, how you can lead a growing team. And the essence of that is, to be able to have as a leader emotional intelligence, resilience and vision. And we'll look at different leadership models that we can adopt and use from an African perspective. Episode number 8 talks about how to motivate people. So this is very much an important episode that discusses organizational culture, how to build culture, and how to sustain for a performance of your teams. Motivation and retention strategies are very important. So in that episode, we'll feature an HR, human resource expert, who will talk to us about how to motivate teams and how the dynamics work within an African business context. Episode number 9 is about governance and integrity in Africa. There are many institutional voids in Africa or institutional challenges that are a part of doing business in Africa. This is certainly the case in most of the countries that I've been in. So the idea with this podcast is to say, how do you structure your corporate governance and how do you maintain integrity in an environment where there are systemic challenges such as corruption, there's issues that may affect your integrity as a business person. So we'll talk about building transparent institutions, we'll talk about ethical business practices and frameworks, and then we'll feature somebody who has done extensive research on issues like corruption and institutional voids and how to manage those going forward and to build a sustainable business. Episode number 10, we'll discuss lessons from leading through a crisis. This is basically inspired by my own personal journey of going through the whole COVID-19 period from 2020 and leading a team, and I'll share my experiences, and I'll also invite an entrepreneur who has similar experiences or even a different experience, and we'll discuss how we led through that difficult time. And then the idea then is to then set the tone for future crisis. So if a COVID-like or even worse crisis comes in the future, are we prepared enough? Having learned what we have learned from the COVID era, are we prepared enough to navigate through that and to succeed in that? So again, the essence of that is your resilience strategies, your risk and crisis management strategies, and building an anti-fragile business model. So the conversation there will be centered around building a business model that can survive crisis and issues, as we have seen from the COVID era. Then moving on, episode number 12, we'll talk about managing failure in business. So I'll feature an entrepreneur who has gone through various challenges and failed. Personally, from our businesses, we've had ideas and even businesses that have failed. And I'll share a bit on that and what we can take from that. The idea is to reframe failure as a learning tool and to talk about how we can fail forward as entrepreneurs and how we can persist and learn and move on and succeed in the future. The next episode, which is 13, talks about youth and the next generation. So this is where I'll feature somebody young, a business person, and talk about fresh perspective for accelerated progress. I'll also talk about the next generation leadership frameworks. How does the next or the newer generation differ from our generation? I'm a millennial, and I'm interested to understand how new business people, new business leaders are taking entrepreneurship hands-on. Then episode 14, we'll talk about the Pan-African collaboration. The idea there is to talk about breaking barriers across different countries in Africa, how we can create cohesion and treaties and bridge the gaps that are there between all the different countries. I do believe that Africa should be doing business together, and I believe that every business person who operates in Africa should also be considering African countries, the neighboring African countries and regions, as potential clients. And I think there should be a policy discussion that enhances that. I know there's a couple of discussions going on already. So it's something that we need to discuss further and see what is the potential of let's say, doing business from South Africa, but in a different country such as Nigeria or Kenya or Zimbabwe. Episode number 15 talks about innovation. So building hubs and accelerators, how we can build innovative hubs or ecosystems in an African context, how we can collaborate with other innovators and entrepreneurs in building those ecosystems and frameworks. The very last episode is a wrap-up. This will consolidate all the issues discussed within the series. So it'll be a synthesis of the themes and the insights gained from episode number 1 up to episode number 15. We will talk about what listeners can act on, and hopefully by then, at the end of that season, we'll then take a sneak peek into season 2 and what's coming in the next season of the Africa's Untold Business Stories podcast. So again, thank you for taking the time to tune in and listen to One Story. I'm very excited about this podcast and its potential. More importantly, I'm excited about the different people that I'll be talking to and interviewing and discussing various issues as I have highlighted. I hope that the podcast will help you as an entrepreneur or even as an upcoming entrepreneur to give you insights that you might need. I believe, just looking at my own entrepreneurial journey, that I didn't need to go through certain things. If only I had somebody who told me or taught me how to do certain things or how to process or manage a certain issue prior to me doing so, I think that would have been very helpful in my own entrepreneurial journey. And this is what I'm trying to achieve in this podcast. So again, I'm your host, Dr. Eddie Matikiti. This is the One Story podcast, and we are talking about Africa's Untold Business Stories. I look forward to the recording of the first episode and uploading it, and obviously uploading the successive episodes in the next couple of weeks. Thank you so much for tuning in, and have a great day further.